But like the reality is that this is the system that we're dealt as artists, right? The reality is that if you look at the impacts of the music industry, flying and artist travel is not the biggest impact anyway. It's audience travel. There's other impacts that are bigger than the artist traveling, because you're still talking about such a small percentage of the people who are operating the industry who are traveling like that. I mean, music streaming has an insane carbon footprint, right? Like it's huge. So, and it's bigger than it ever was with CDs or records, even though those are physical products, just because of the amount of energy that's required to operate the servers and the data transfer. On top of that, creating the devices that we use to stream music also has massive impacts on the environment and the climate, right? So how do we work on changing that system? It's important that we can have these conversations without blaming people or canceling people or whatever you want to say about, or yelling at each other. These are just like, it's so nuanced and everybody's got their own story. We can't expect everybody to live the same way.
You're listening to the Mission Makers Show, a podcast that inspires humans to get into the mindset of success. My name's Farah Nanji, and I'm the founder of a business in the motorsports industry that explores leadership lessons from things like Formula One. I'm also a DJ and music producer in the underground electronic scene, and a public speaker on key topics like resilience, building high-performance teams, overcoming learning difficulties, and stimulating creativity. And to tie it all together, I love writing thought-provoking content as a journalist for these industries which are so unique in themselves. On this show, I'm sitting down with some of the most inspiring and driven people I've met around the world to talk about their processes, their failures, the lessons they've learned, and how they are truly making an impact for this world. Welcome back to Mission Makers. I'm delighted to be joined by Eli Goldstein today, who's widely recognized as one half of the renowned DJ and production duo Soulclap. Now, not only has Eli been a prolific artist for the last 2 decades, but he's also been using his platform to create wider change as the driving force behind DJs for Climate Action, where he plays an instrumental role in mobilizing the music community to address climate challenges. He's also involved in various initiatives to bridge the worlds of music with social impact and empowerment. And today's conversation is going to touch upon not only the factors of success in the music industry, but the steps every stakeholder can take to create a more healthier ecosystem for our planet. So let's dive in. Eli, thanks so much for joining us. How are you doing today? Where are you joining me from?
Thanks for having me, Farah. I am beaming in from the beautiful Hudson Valley in upstate New York, where I live.
Something we always like to begin our interviews with here at Mission Makers is kind of going a bit deeper into the meaning of a person's name. So are you familiar with what Eli means?
Yeah, it's funny. I mean, my name is disconnected, I feel like, from its meaning in some ways, in that, I'm Jewish, and my parents chose a Jewish name. However, they're both atheists. So I was not raised religious, but they still chose a Jewish name. I mean, it could be Elias or Elijah the prophet being the biblical significance of the name, but they just chose Eli for me. I think that was their way of being different, but still, not being religious with it, but still, having that name. So yeah, it's I'm not sure what the significance it has for me, but I think there's a lot in a name, so it hangs over me without me thinking about it so much, regardless.
And just for context, your from what we research, your name means kind of elevated, ascended, high. Does that resonate?
It used to resonate more. These days, I'm more of a dad than a raver, but yeah, no, I still think trying to get that natural high.
100%.
And I do think like the biblical bit, the prophet part of it, right, is like spreading information and ideas, and music is all very, very important in my life.
Yeah, certainly is. So talking of music, you do form one better half of the duo known as Soulclap.
And you guys have been around for, more than 2 decades now. So talk to our audience a little bit about where that journey kind of started from and how did it evolve into the missions that you're behind today?
Yeah, so Soul Clap started back in 2001 officially in Boston. Um, Myself and Charlie, my longtime partner, are both from the Boston area. I'm from Cambridge. He's from Brookline, opposite sides of the Charles River. And we were introduced by a mutual friend in high school, even before that, in the late 90s, because we were both DJs and both, ravers going out, part of that 90s US rave scene, which was really an incredible culture to grow up in. But at the time there just weren't that many DJs. So our mutual friend Sour Pete, aka Vegan Pete, introduced us because he was like, "You guys are both DJs. You should know each other." And so yeah, we ended up going to some parties together, starting to listen to music, go record shopping together, and ultimately in the early 2000s, we were like, kind of had this shared vision of what we wanted to accomplish musically, coming out of really different flavors of house music, but still shared vision of like house music being this unifying genre, and started sharing a record collection. We were going to the record shops and being like, instead of buying two copies of something, let's just pool our collection and buy one copy so we can get more records. And so we started doing that and DJing together. I think we had our first official Soul Clap gig at a rave in Western Massachusetts in 2001. Soon after we came up with the name. And you want to talk about significance of names? Soul Clap is an interesting one because, at that time in the early 2000s, the house music scene in Boston was like very Black and Latin, right? It's like now we're kind of dealing with the opposite, right? Where like electronic music, house music has gotten so white and like has kind of moved away from its roots from these more marginalized communities. And that's part of the discussion now is how do we bring that back and shine a light on that. But at that time, it was like we were the only white boys going out to these parties, and so we're like, yo, what's the name that's gonna get us, the most cred in that circle? And so we came up with Soul Clap, and it's been an important name because it's meant we always stick to our mission of soulful, uplifting, funky music that connects with your spirit has always been part of it. Has always been part of our musical mission. So that's an important significance of the name.
And how did it kind of evolve into more of the kind of climate stuff that you're very passionate about, making a change in the scene towards?
Yeah, well, I mean, so it was a long slog in Boston, right? We were doing mobile DJing. We were we were trying we were started playing so we were doing mobile DJing, we were playing in nightclubs, which required a lot of like top 40 and at that time was hip hop, R&B, reggae. And but always loving house, doing underground parties in Boston with just a few people coming out. And you know, finally in 2007 we decided to commit to like just focusing on the music we loved and not just doing the other DJing to make a living. And we got serious about making music, got deep in the studio. Like, look, we'll give it a year. If we don't make any progress, then maybe we need to try to find something else to do. We're in our mid 20s by that time. And luckily everything clicked. We put out, our friends started a label called Airdrop Records in New York. This was a moment when the scene in the US was like teeny and like so underground, and just we're a part of that movement that was bubbling in New York and Miami and in Denver and LA and Chicago. Things started happening, and we started traveling in like 2008, Detroit, and we linked up with Wolf and Lamb in 2009 from the infamous Marcy Hotel parties in New York City, and everything just took off from there. So 2009 we just started traveling around the world. So there was like a good 10 years of that, 2009 to 2019. And, throughout that, I kind of had this feeling that like I needed, like, sharing music and positive vibrations and uplifting people is really an incredible experience and like kind of the most amazing job that, I could ask for. And, but I just felt like I needed to do more, right? Like I feel like I needed to make a bigger impact beyond just that dance floor, like beyond just the people who had the privilege to be on that dance floor. So climate work kind of found me. And it's funnily enough, I actually had been this kind of came back to me more recently, that I had been like part of this earth chorus in the Boston area when I was in elementary school. Like just like we would go around and sing songs about the environment and the earth, which I didn't really think about until more recently, once like I got deeper on the climate work like that. So I had to start when I was a kid and then didn't really think about it for a long time. And then a friend of mine started an organization called DJs For Climate Action back in around 2012, 13. And it started out as a way for DJs to offset our carbon emissions from flying on like a 3-tier system. And I was, really curious, and it kind of piqued my interest as to like what my impacts were. I was like, oh wait, I'm actually having these negative impacts just by flying and pursuing this music career. And so, I connected deeply. His name's Sammy Bananas, Sam Posner, old Boston friend, but has lived in New York for years. And, we connected on that. And then over the years, I got more and more involved with DJs for Climate Action. And I helped found our Earth Night initiative in 2017 or 18. It's now our 6th year doing Earth Night this year. That's coming up in April. And by 2019, I'm one of the, I guess, more high profile artists to talk about this stuff in the electronic music industry. So I was asked to speak on a couple panels at ADE Green back in 2019. And, in preparing for the panels, I realized that I just didn't really know enough to be an expert. And here I'm getting called on to be an expert, but I just wanted to know more. So I started digging. I had recently moved up here to upstate New York. And I was like, look, I wonder what I can do to educate myself, whether it's like some kind of workshops or some kind of program. And it actually turns out that a college right near me, Bard College, has a Center for Environmental Policy with a master's degree in climate science and policy. So I was like, oh, this is cool. I went and visited. And I figured it would be something I could do down the line, like a couple more years of touring and then look at pivoting more to the climate stuff. And then pandemic happened. And it was like perfect timing. I was like, I managed to get my application in right before the deadline. Had a feeling that it was a good time. Like the touring wasn't going to happen the way it had been. And it was going to take a while to get back. At first, maybe there was this wishful thinking that we were going to get back to normal quickly, but I had a feeling in the back of my head that this was actually a really seismic event for our industry and for my career. And so I started the master's program in September 2020 and kind of did a full year, the full year of academics. And then last year I just did an internship and then took most of the year off. And now I'm back in since September 2022. I've been working on this thesis. And, it's more than just the academic part, right? Like I've spent this time building a really, really wide network of people in the electronic music industry and the music industry in general who care about climate and nature and the environment and are, doing this work. And part of my biggest goal is, how to bring all of us together and work towards our shared vision of protecting our planet and the people on our planet.
It's kind of humbling to hear, like obviously you've had such success in the music industry, then you pivoted and you took an internship, right? Like that's insane. So like what was that about? Where did you intern, and like what were the things that you were required to do? If you want to hear the rest of our conversation, then head over to Spotify, Apple, or wherever else you get your podcasts.